So what happens when a global superpower basically turns trade into a weapon? How does a rising economy even begin to push back? Well, not with a sword, but with a shield. Today, we're going to dig into how India built its own strategic economic shield to navigate a global trade war.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we've got to look at the big picture, the geopolitical chessboard, to see the opening moves. Then we'll get into the specifics of America's economic pressure. From there, we'll see exactly how India built this strategic shield. And finally, we'll talk about the long-term vision, the real endgame here.
Okay, so first things first. To really get why India did what it did, we have to understand the action that caused the reaction. And let me tell you, this was way more than just a simple trade spat. This was a major geopolitical move.
And this quote, wow, it really just says it all. This wasn't about sitting down to negotiate. No, this was the language of confrontation. For India, these huge tariffs felt like a direct challenge, almost an attack, designed to force them into a corner.
So you might be asking, where did all this heat come from? Well, it all stemmed from the America First policy. The whole idea was pretty straightforward. Use the incredible power of the U.S. market to kind of rebalance global trade. And for a country like India, the message was loud and clear. Either you open up key parts of your economy, like agriculture, or you're going to face some serious economic pain.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks. How did this policy actually turn into a real, tangible threat for India? Let's look at the numbers, because they really tell the story here. So why was everyone so worried? It's actually pretty simple. Imagine your number one customer, the one who buys almost a fifth of everything you sell, suddenly starts talking about charging you extra just to do business. That's exactly the position India was in. The US is its biggest customer, and that kind of dependency, well, it's a massive vulnerability.
And this wasn't just some random, broad threat. Oh no, it was more like a laser-guided strike. The tariffs were aimed right at the heart of India's export economy. We're talking textiles, gems and jewelry, auto parts. These are the industries that are the lifeblood for millions of jobs.
So what's the bottom line? Well, economists were looking at a direct hit that could shave off 0.5 percentage point from India's GDP growth. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but for a fast-growing economy like India, every single decimal point matters. That's a huge blow that could slow down the whole country's progress.
So with all this pressure building, you'd think India would just punch back, right? But they didn't. Instead, they chose something called strategic restraint. And you have to ask, why? Well, getting into a tit-for-tat trade war would have been chaotic. It would have meant higher prices for everyday people back home. So India decided to take a deep breath and play the long game.
And that brings us to the core of what we're talking about today. What exactly was this long game? It was all about building that economic shield, piece by careful piece, to create an economy that could stand on its own 2 feet.
This whole strategy was built on 3 main ideas, 3 big pillars. First, tackle high energy costs to make their own products cheaper and more competitive. Second, make their financial system stronger so it could handle shocks from the global economy. And third, get out there and find new customers, new markets all over the world.
All right, pillar number 1, energy. India did something pretty radical here. They passed something called the Shanti Bill, which was a total game changer. It opened up their nuclear energy sector to private and even foreign investment. Now, you have to understand, this was a huge deal. For decades, that sector was completely state-controlled. So why do it? The goal was dead simple. Lower the cost of energy for Indian industry. Because, cheaper power means you can make your products for less, which makes you way more competitive on the world stage.
Okay, on to the second pillar, strengthening the financial system. So India raised the investment limit for foreign companies in the insurance sector all the way up to 100%. The thinking here was to pull in stable, long-term money from other countries. See, more foreign capital means a bigger, more stable financial system. And a stronger insurance industry, that's like a safety net for your exporters when global markets get rocky.
And there was a really clever geopolitical play here, too. India created this unified securities market code. Basically, they took a whole mess of confusing financial laws and simplified everything into one clear, transparent rulebook. Just imagine you're an international investor. The message they're sending couldn't be clearer. Hey, look at us. We're stable, we're predictable, and we're a much safer bet than China right now.
And that brings us to the third pillar, which is basically the golden rule of business. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. India went on this massive push for new free trade agreements, or FTAs. I mean, look at this. The deal with Oman, that basically gets rid of export duties. And then her talks with the UK, the EU, New Zealand, the list goes on. The strategy is obvious. Stop relying so much on the US market by opening up new trade routes all over the world.
So when you put all these pieces together, what's the big picture? What's the geopolitical endgame? Because this whole shield, it's not just for defense, it's also a launchpad.
And really, here's what it all boils down to. Every single one of these moves is part of a much bigger vision. It's about turning the Make India campaign into a credible, global alternative to China. It's about making sure that when India goes to the negotiating table, it's not as a junior partner, but as a real power player. And ultimately, it's about clearing the path to becoming a $5 trillion economy.
So this all leaves us with one huge question, doesn't it? India has built this incredible shield using a mix of patience and bold reforms. But you know, the world is only getting more unpredictable. So the real question is, will this shield be strong enough to handle the next geopolitical storm? And that's the multi-trillion-dollar question.